I was watching, there's a video on your YouTube channel that is about the Matrix, which I love that movie and the metaphor. And so I love how you kind of like really dive into it. You show sort of like two scenarios, like what people think of as a spiritual awakening versus what is reality.
Yeah.
And so I want to, ask you a little bit about your own journey and what that process looked like for you.
hmm Yeah. The reason I put that clip in that video is because when I had like I'd been seeking after, enlightenment or freedom from suffering for many years, but I had a sort of awakening experience, which I've talked about a few times on my channel, in 2017, where I really had I really saw it for myself internally. And it was like something that really shifted my state of consciousness in a permanent way. Where after the realization happened, the moment happened, I spent 2 straight weeks in this sort of blissed out state where I felt like I was just floating through life. I had not a single thought in my mind. I was totally in harmony with life. There was no more resistance towards anything, no resistance towards who I am, just perfect acceptance and perfect love. And, I hardly even talked during those 2 weeks because I was just so enamored with the beauty of reality. And I thought that was going to be my permanent state of consciousness. But long story short, I was dating a girl at the time who had borderline personality disorder. And she was, just kind of going off the deep end. So we had to break up. I through the experience I had, I saw that, oh, I'm actually being unloving by staying in this relationship. So I broke up with her, and that caused her to really be in a lot of emotional pain. And so she's, no, please don't leave me, baby. I'll do anything. No, we can fix this. And seeing her in so much emotional pain brought me back into suffering again. And I experienced suffering for the first time after those 2 weeks. And that sort of, brought me out of the blissed out state I was in. And so I broke up with her, moved out. We were living together, got my own place. And all of a sudden I was like completely alone. And all of the shadow aspects of myself that had been sort of like dampened or were just laying dormant during those 2 weeks of that crazy nirvana experience, they started bubbling up to the surface because, energy can't be created or destroyed, right? And so I got thrown into this pit of extreme depression, super severe depression. All of my codependency on needing a relationship just got manifested in full 3D Technicolor, in front of me. And I couldn't live with myself. I was so miserable. And I knew it was an illusion because I had experienced those 2 weeks of nirvana and seen, oh, all of my suffering is a total illusion. My mind creates it. But yet at the same time, there was all that energy manifesting of the shadow self being depressed and lonely and crying out for affirmation and all that stuff. And it took me about a solid year of doing really intense inner work, which is, people ask, how do you know all the things you know about on your channel? How do you teach the way you teach? And what books have you read, And I'm like, well, I've read some books, but so has everyone else. The knowledge has come from living it, from being in the pit of hell for a year straight and every day just doing all that I can to find relief from these belief systems that were in place in my mind that I'm incomplete, I'm lacking something, I'm not good enough, yada, yada, yada. And I came out of that time and, it's the catalyst for your entire growth, right? You can't know your true nature until you go through that dark night of the soul because it serves as the contrast you need. But, people think that spiritual awakening is this sort of just pure bliss. Everything happens like Eckhart Tolle or something. In that one instant, you don't have to do any shadow work. You're good to go, right? And so that's why I wanted to portray that clip, which is like Neo waking up from the Matrix and pulling the tube out of his throat and like this shocking realization that, wow, I have like anchor points of guilt and shame and self-condemnation just all over me. And I've got a lot of work to do here, right? That's really what a spiritual awakening is.
I love that. I love how you explain that. And I'm just curious for somebody right now that might be waking up to that a bit and kind of understanding the matrix. how would you explain sort of the ego and how to start to get to break free from that?
Hmm. This is something I'm really interested in, obviously, because I suffered from it for so long. And so when you suffer really deeply from something, maybe not everyone, but most people, naturally you start to become very curious about the nature of your experience, right? And you start asking questions like, why? What is causing this suffering? Why do I believe these things that I know conceptually aren't true? Why is my mind doing this to me? And through asking those kinds of questions, deeply seeking to know the truth sort of just began revealing itself to me through my own experience. And I began to see that uh, the ego is a defense mechanism in the mind that evolution has put in place from our evolutionary past. And it's extremely intelligent. And it's basically just designed to do one thing, which is to help you survive. It's all self preservation thinking, right? But our ego is a bit different than like an animal's ego, because an animal's ego is only concerned with physical survival. There's basically no real social survival complex built into their egos because they're not self aware yet, like humans are. They don't have an intellectual concept of self yet, right? But as humans evolved with this self awareness, knowing I exist as a concept, then the conceptual mind had to evolve to keep up with that. And so now the ego needs to adapt to help us survive, not just physically, look out for danger, fight or flight, but it needs to help us survive socially, right? And socially became the social construct of the human psyche became much more important than the physical survival did, because now we have tribes, we have weapons, we can protect ourselves. We're not wandering around the wilderness aimlessly, but we have this social hierarchy, right? And where you are in the social hierarchy dramatically dictates your quality of life. The higher up in the social hierarchy you go, you get better access to mates, food, water, shelter. You have to do less work. You can relax more. The lower you are down the totem pole, you got to do more of the grunt work. You risk your life more because you got to be the hunter and all this stuff. You get the lower tier mates in the tribe. You get the lower tier food in the tribe. And so if you do something wrong and piss the tribe off, they'll kick you out of the tribe. You're off by yourself, or they might even execute you. So the ego had to adapt to keep up with these new variables. And so it created this mechanism, which is the whole basically program of ego, which we call guilt. Guilt is the mechanism that ego uses to trick the body into it's guilt is like a manufactured threat, right? It's like a synthetic threat the mind creates where it triggers the body's fight or flight because the body's impersonal. It doesn't know whether or not there's really a threat there, right? Triggers the body's fight or flight. So if the mind says that someone else has created an undesired outcome, then it triggers fight, which is anger. And if I've done something to bring about an undesired outcome, it triggers flight, which is fear. And so it's one of those two emotions, and the ego just piggybacks off of them. So either someone's guilty or I'm guilty. Usually it's me. And this idea that I'm guilty is basically a manifestation of this deeply ingrained belief that my happiness depends upon outcomes, upon achieving pleasurable outcomes, right? If I have to go manufacture good outcomes, and if I manufacture a bad one, then I'm guilty for that. And it makes a lot of sense from a social survival perspective, right? Because again, if someone attacks me, like verbally or whatever, in front of the group, that's going to diminish my status in the hierarchy. Everyone's going to see me as stupid or whatever. And so I better attack them back and stand up for myself, right? I don't want to drop down the social ladder. So it triggers fight. Or if I make a stupid mistake, I do something wrong that pisses the tribe off with me, then it's going to trigger flight, which creates fear. And you have this self-guilt, self-shame, because the ego is saying, hey, I'm going to make you feel so bad about that stupid mistake you made that you never do it again, right? So it's all about risk avoidance. This is what social anxiety is, right? If you go to a party or something, or you're just with friends and you say something and you get made fun of for it, everyone laughs at you. Well, that's like a trauma to the mind. The mind gets traumatized, and the ego says, oh, okay, so expressing myself authentically in front of people creates, it pushes me down the social ladder. So let's create a lot of social anxiety to motivate this being to never express themselves socially because that's safer. It's going to preserve their status in the hierarchy at least. So it doesn't care about you being authentic. It doesn't even understand that. It just cares about preserving your survival. So transcending ego has to begin with finding, where am I guilty? Where have I become guilty for who I am? Where am I feeling shame for who I am? And you can see that not only in yourself, but in how you're judging other people. Because once the guilt is removed and you've forgiven yourself and accepted yourself, then the ego has no control any longer, because guilt is the whole program of ego. And so, as the Course in Miracles says, the guiltless mind cannot suffer, because guilt is the cause of pain in any form.
Wow. So for you, when you started to become aware of these concepts, how did it look like in your life? I mean, did your life completely change? Did you quit your job? I mean, what are some of the things that started to shift in your world?
Great question. Well, just thinking back, I was by myself because my girlfriend was my whole life at that point. I was super codependent and all that. And so my whole identity was that relationship. So without that, there's this huge vacuum, which the ego didn't like. It starts crying out, you better fill this void, go find another girlfriend, and right. And I knew inherently, no, that's not the solution. The problem is I feel guilty about who I am, that I'm not good enough to be happy alone. I don't love myself enough to be comfortable alone. And that's actually the problem, not that I'm single, right? So it took me into this huge depression. And then, all these other insecurities began to manifest, like you'll never succeed in life. You'll never accomplish anything good. My whole family, except for my parents and my sister, had ostracized me from my new beliefs and everything. So I had no relationship anymore with aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. And I was always a huge family person. I love my family. So that was really hard to deal with. And the ego was just shoving that in my face every day. So it was like a huge storm, to be honest, like everything all at once. And again, that's what really causes you or forces you to find the answers within yourself, So I just began dealing with the biggest one first, which was this insecurity with being alone, feeling uncomfortable with myself. And I knew I got to learn how to love myself. And I realized actually loving myself isn't about finding love or doing love or whatever, because you actually can't. I realized, like, I tried that route so many times and it just never worked, because I ended up realizing this is like a total catch 22, right? I'm the one who has no self-love, yet I'm trying to love myself. So it's like, I have no love to give. So how am I going to do this? So I realized the whole problem was guilt. I just had to see the unreality of those beliefs the mind had put in place, that you're not good enough, you're incomplete, you need someone to be happy. And I guess I could summarize it all by one little moment I had, a sort of an aha moment that sort of broke it all free for me. I would go out to my balcony at night and I would listen to Eckhart or Muji or somebody like that. I would meditate or whatever and just do lots of shadow work and self-inquiry. And I had this one night where I was so mad that it wasn't working. I was like, I fucking meditate. I forgive people. I try to love myself. I read all the right books. I have crystals in my room. I've done every fucking thing. And yet I hate myself, And so I just had this really sincere, like, outcry to the universe. And I said, why do I feel this way, even though I know it's not true? Conceptually, I know I'm not incomplete. I know I don't need someone to be happy, but Jesus Christ, it feels so real. What am I supposed to do? And I felt this huge, inner voice come booming back inside of me. And it said, Aaron, why do you believe you need another person to love yourself? And I said, I don't know. That's what I'm asking you, right? And I said, I don't know why I can't feel love for myself without a person here. And then the voice came back and said, Aaron, feel it now. And I had this flash in my mind of a memory of my ex, who I had broken up with that previous year. And the way she used to gaze at me with this awestruck, puppy dog eyes. And I would feel so good, like, oh, look how much she loves me and adores me, right? And I saw that, but I saw it from a different angle. I saw it that her eyeballs were like mirrors and they were just reflecting. I was seeing my own value in her eyes because I couldn't see to myself. I was blinded from it. I needed another person to be my mirror to reflect it back, right? But I saw, oh, actually, all that love I ever felt from her wasn't her love coming into me, but I was seeing my value in her eyes, right? You can only give yourself love. No one else can give you love if you don't have it. So she was never giving me love. She was actually allowing me to see my own love. And it was like this huge aha moment. And I just felt like immersed in love for the first time. Just, I loved the shit out of myself. I'm so amazing. Like, what else could I ask for? I'm so grateful to be this person. I love every aspect of who I am. And so because of that, I was alone on my balcony, just drenched in this liquid love. And I went, okay, awesome. I've seen it firsthand. I do not need another person to love myself. I've been looking the wrong direction. And it all just sort of made sense from that point on. And that was really the one big breakthrough that gave me some relief and allowed the other things to start cascading down in order,
It's a beautiful story. I'm just curious, in your opinion, like from a spiritual perspective, why is it so difficult, you think, for people to love themselves? Do you think that it is part of the programming, or is that just a part of the process?
Yeah, it is a part of the programming. It's due to the fact that we inherit this body with this mind. I like to call the ego the body mind because it's literally the mind that comes with this body, right? So you have your heart is beating, your lungs are breathing, blood is circulating, the body is doing everything for you. And likewise, it also comes pre-installed with a mind that has thoughts for you, right? Based on our evolutionary past. So our genetics have encoded certain beliefs from past our ancestors, what they believed about themselves. It just gets passed down through the DNA. And this, the main belief of ego is that I'm incomplete. Something's missing. So I got to go find it in outcomes. Got to go make good things happen for myself. And that's why everyone's running around trying to find their happiness outside themselves. And so it seems like a bad thing, right? Like, why would the universe do this? But from a higher perspective, that the ego, that belief serves as the catalyst again for us to really seek for our true nature, because the source wants to know itself. That's what we're all doing here. And I think the Buddha said, when the suffering ends, the seeking ends, which is why enlightenment is the end of suffering. So without that suffering, if everything's peachy keen, we don't seek to find what our true nature is, right? So it serves a purpose.
Yeah, that's such a great way of explaining it. Thank you for that. So I know that you gave up modeling at that time. I just want to hear a little bit about that. Like, what, did it just not resonate anymore?
No one's ever asked me about that. That's awesome. Yeah, I was working with an agency in SF for a couple of years, and I didn't do a whole lot of modeling shoots. It was more the fact that I was competing in bodybuilding at the time. It's so funny to look back on because I was competing for about a year in bodybuilding. I won my first show, won my second show, qualified for nationals, and then went to nationals the following year. And by the time I got to nationals, like, I could care less. I hated bodybuilding. I hated everything about it. Being backstage and seeing all these people just like so absorbed in their physical appearance. It felt very opposite of what I was looking for at that time. And it just didn't resonate. But I was doing it because I thought I should do it, because I was, gifted at it. I had like a good physique for it and stuff. And my coach was like, man, we can make you a pro. Like, you've got the perfect physique for this. Just a couple more shows and I guarantee. And so I was doing what I think I should do versus what I feel like doing. So it wasn't authentic. And that's something else I teach about on my channel a lot, is when you're doing what you think you should do, you're living inauthentically, right? But when you follow your inner resonance, what do I feel on the inside? That's authenticity. And sometimes it's hard to acknowledge that. It's hard to admit that. Even like if you're in a relationship and you're staying in it because you think you should, but you're not really, your heart's not in this with this person. I mean, that's disingenuous, and it's causing that person suffering and you suffering. So the authentic thing to do is to communicate that truth to them and, let them go on their way and you go on your way. But that's really hard to do, right? And
It
so,
is.
bodybuilding was a much easier version of that, of course. But I gave up bodybuilding because I just got to that point where it was creating so much internal conflict. I was like, this isn't who I am. Like, I don't care how I look, right? So I stopped posting shirtless pictures. I quit my modeling agency. I stopped bodybuilding. And then I just devoted all my time and energy into seeking the things I was looking for.
Do you still have a really strong like physical practice? Is that a big part of, you know, your overall well-being? What are some of the like tools that you kind of turn to for your own well-being?
Yeah, definitely. I work out probably like 6 days a week. I just love working out. I love training. I competed in CrossFit for about 5 years previous to bodybuilding, and I was an absolute gym rat. That's how I got the physique to do modeling, really. So I've just ingrained that loving being in the gym, loving training. So I just do it for fun now. I do Olympic weightlifting about 5 days a week just because I love it. And then I do yoga about 2 to 3 days a week, also because I love it. And I've stopped doing the things that I used to do, that like the bodybuilding stuff, like tons of bicep curls and stuff like that. I didn't enjoy it, but I was doing it because I wanted to maintain a certain physique. And so not being identified with my appearance anymore has been great, because now I can just do the stuff I love doing. And I look forward to going to the gym every day rather than like, oh, I need to get in the gym and do my biceps for this week. It just wasn't authentic for me anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I know probably a lot of your videos come from, different clients that you work with, their questions and reaching out to you. What are some of the, common struggles that you find in your work with clients?
Great question. Definitely self-love. Almost all my clients that I work with, sometimes I'll get a client that's like, they want help in like terms of law of attraction or something. Like, hey, I'm about to start this business. I'm feeling all these doubts. Like, help me get through this wall. But that's probably like 20% or less, and probably 80% or more are, help me. I'm suffering. I want to find my true nature. I want to find freedom. And so I take them through from the beginning of, hey, the whole problem's guilt. Here's how we're going to get rid of it. Here's how we're going to find your authenticity, by removing these blockages that your mind has built around it. And so that shows up in a myriad of different forms. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to touch on that a little bit. I'm curious. So, when you say removing guilt, is there a process that you recommend, like, kind of purging that through journaling, or is there like a systematic approach that you recommend?
hmm Yeah. So there's, probably infinite different ways you could do it. It could be different from person to person. So it could be case by case, but I think that what worked for me is what seems to work really well for others. So that's just what I normally teach. The first thing I'll do is I'll have my clients spend, if we're doing a weekly meeting, I'll say, okay, this week, all I want you to do is, the instant you feel yourself suffering at any moment, do a full stop and dive inside yourself and go, okay, where's the guilt? Where is it? Find it, because it's there. You'll always find guilt at the root of your suffering. I'm guilty for something, or I'm making them guilty for something. And even them being made guilty is just a reflection of my guilt, right? And so they'll do that for a week, and they'll come back with all these epiphanies and aha moments of like, whoa, I realized that I'm guilty for literally everything. Like, I know, right? It's crazy. And so once the awareness is there around the guilt, first of all, that starts the healing process in and of itself, because your true nature knows what it is. It loves itself completely already. It's perfect. And so when it recognizes, oh, I've been trapped in this illusion of guilt, I've been being absorbed by this thought program, I don't want to be. And so there's that desire there of, I don't want to be involved with this. And that disconnects you from that program a bit. And you sort of drift away from that point, and it just fades into the distance where, the analogy I love to use is like, it's like watching a movie. Once you've seen a movie once, you can't ever really watch it the same way again, right? You already know everything that's going to happen. The climax of the movie doesn't grip you emotionally as much. The jump out scary parts don't scare you as much. And if you keep watching the movie, 10 times, 20 times, Eventually you're quoting the whole thing word for word. You're like, and the jump out, 3, 2, 1, whoop, there it is. And you're getting increasingly like nauseated by it, right? After 100 times, you're like, someone shoot me in the face, please. I don't want to watch this movie again. And
Right.
that's exactly what your relationship becomes like with your ego. It's so predictable. You understand its function, you understand the mechanics of it. And understanding for me is like the light of awareness. Like, I need to know why the ego is doing it, how it's doing it, when it does it, why it does it. And once I know that, it really drains its power, because it's no longer this mysterious entity that I'm personalizing and, oh, I'm thinking these thoughts. You go, oh, there's the program. You just start recognizing it for what it is. And your true self sort of starts winning itself back step by step. And this happens really fast for some people, and it takes a lot longer for others, depending on the level of trauma. But, we go into inner child work and everything. And where did you make yourself guilty in that moment as a child? Something is wrong with me because I'm feeling this. And then we go back to that memory and say, okay, see that inner child being abused or crying in her room because of the abuse, and wrap your arms around her and tell her there is nothing wrong with what you felt. You should have felt what you felt. There's nothing wrong with you at all. And I will be here with you, loving you through this darkness. And you give that inner child the love and the acceptance and understanding that it didn't get at 5 years old or whatever, because that child is still trapped in your mind, right? It's in a prison cell because your subconscious mind doesn't operate in time. It just knows energy. So that snapshot of that moment is still in your subconscious mind. And until it gets healed, it will always be crying out for attention. And that healing is always a process of forgiving myself for the guilt that my mind had cast upon me for reacting the way I did to life. You aren't in control with how you react to life. You're being run by a mind-made program that is literally running you and pretending to be you. And until you have self-awareness, sorry, you don't get the choice of how you respond. You react according to what the program tells you to do. And once you see that, you say, oh, so who's really guilty then? Would I have consciously chosen to feel self-shame? Of course not. If it was up to me, I'd feel happy all the time. So something else has done it. So you see, everyone, I'm completely innocent. I never did those things. The mind did them. And I just sort of was believing the wrong voice. And those epiphanies for people seem to just break free those programs of guilt and shame that kept them locked in those prison cells for so long.
Mm-hmm. I have so many questions. But first, do you work with more male or female clients, or kind of a mixture of both?
It's a pretty even mix. Maybe 60% female, 40% male. Women just tend to be more open to doing like shadow work and emotional healing and stuff than men do. So I think that's probably why, but it's pretty even mix.
It is. It's beautiful to have, you as a guide, as a man doing this work in the world. It's really beautiful. What advice would you have for somebody out there? We're in Scorpio season, so anybody right now that is, struggling with any, shadows that they're working through.
Shadow season.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still, I think I have like 2 months left in my Saturn return.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is funny because it started, exactly 2 years ago, I think, when that really severe depression sat in. It was like right when my Saturn return started, which I didn't find out till later. I was like, oh, look at the synchronicities,
Right.
The heavens are bringing about the shadow for us. So if you're going through a similar experience right now with these suppressed aspects crying out, creating a lot of chaos for you, projecting them onto others, onto the world, then that's just a sign that they're ready to be healed, right? They're saying, hey, I'm here. Please come help me. Give me the love I've been looking for. And so the process, in concept is very simple. We're just trying to give love to those parts of us we haven't loved. That's really all shadow work is. But putting it into practice is much more difficult because it means you have to be willing to face those things you're running from, those mistakes you made that you judged yourself for, those tragedies that happened or abuse that might have happened. everything is here to be loved. And so until it is loved, it can't be healed. And as the Course in Miracles says, only love is true, and anything else is a cry for help and a cry for healing. So anyone in your life that's behaving unlovingly, the Course would say is actually, it's a subconscious cry for help from their point of view. They don't know who they are. They don't know how to find peace from this internal angst and self-loathing they feel. So they're just offloading their pain and their guilt onto everyone else. And so if you can see it in them, that's a huge mirror for yourself. Because when you're seeing that happening in someone else with judgment, then you can go, bingo, that's an unhealed part of me, right? If I see someone else being angry and being a jerk to others or me or whatever, but I see them with compassion and I go, oh gosh, they're just so lost, the poor thing, then that's an indication I've healed that. So using other people as your mirrors to what's unhealed within you, for me, has been the most powerful way to really see inside of myself. Because sometimes it's hard to see it in yourself when it's just you without any contrast. Life will bring it up for you, and you just have to kind of wait for it to happen. But when it happens, when you feel that pain come up, when you feel that judgment, you got to know, okay, this is the time to do the work. I can't do the work when it's not being brought up, but it's only when it appears that it's ready for healing to happen. And that's when you dive in and start giving those parts of you love and acceptance.
Aaron, this has been such an amazing conversation. You're such a light in this world, and I'm so excited to, see all the things that you're bringing into fruition. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. It's been a pleasure.